life. Communication is the key to love. Communication is the key to us. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I would like to introduce my colleagues here on the panel. We have the chairman of CBG, Capacity Building Group. Shabir, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Blessed to be the chairman of Capacity Building Group under Africa Federation, and looking forward to learn from Marzia Bhai together with you all, inshallah.
Thank you, Shabir. We have also Mumtaz Bhai here. She is also part of the Capacity Building Board. Mumtaz Bhai, please.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum everybody, and welcome to this CBG session. My name is Mumtaz Ladak. I am with the CBG core team, and I also head the facilitated development module in the CBG. Glad to have you, Marzia Bhai. I'm really looking forward to learning from you and interacting with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mumtaz Bhai. And we have also Nilam Bhai, Jiva from Mombasa. Nilam.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Yeah, I am also a core member at the CBG, Nilam Jiva from Mombasa, and I lead the Mentor Development Program. Karibu Sami.
Thank you. Finally, our main, we're going to introduce our main presenter for today, Marzia Bhai Hassan, also known as APA. She's an author, a public speaker, marriage and family therapist, working with individuals and families in Ontario, Canada, and online. Having lived, studied, and experienced life on 3 continents, she combines Western scientific thought and Eastern spiritual wisdom to bring a unique and practical aspect to her work. She also speaks and writes about the challenges of family relationships in the modern world. She has authored 2 books, Parenting in the Age of Facebook, Raising the Net Generation, and Wind Beneath Your Wings, and also in the process of launching her 3rd book. And she contributed also to various online and print projects. Marzia also publishes a daily blog called Daily Wisdom, which provides inspiration and practical steps to live and love with positivity, purpose, and peace. I'm looking really forward to your presentation, Afa. And this is the 2nd time you have blessed us with your presence, honored us with that. So thank you very much for that. Before I hand over to you, I would just, for our participants, do some housekeeping. A recorded version of this webinar will be available, and we will share handouts on email for your reference after the program. We would love to hear from you, so you'll also receive some feedback form. Hopefully you will have some feedback for us on how we can do even better. And I hope you are going to enjoy. And inshallah, if given time, we will also have some questions at the end. So for those who have just joined us, welcome once again, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome. Marzia Apa, handing over to you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. As-salatu was-salam ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilman. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am delighted to be here this morning. Well, morning for us, afternoon for some of you, and late evening for others. So welcome wherever you are in the world. And we have a packed agenda as always, but let's start with why are we here? So with communication, the biggest thing that we need to remember is the intention with which we are communicating. And this is the spirituality part. So if we are in touch with our intention, and I am assuming here that everyone has the intention of doing the right thing, for sure. Even me, even after doing this work for so many years, I am still learning. I'm still, being caught out every day for when I don't communicate well. And it's a work in progress. So let's start with the setting intentions part. And what I'm going to do is I invite you to just close your eyes, and I'm going to guide you through an intention. And for this, I'm actually going to switch off my video because it's good to do this with privacy, in the sense that we just need to turn inwards, right, at this point. So Bismillah. I'm going to assume that if you're interested in communication, your overall desire is to have less conflict, have more positive connections with others, feel happier, be heard and understood, have more loving connections with your friends and family, create win-win conversations that are a respectful dialogue in all areas of your life, personally and professionally. I'm also assuming that we all recognize that the ability to communicate is a gift from our Creator and our Lord. And when we use it well, when we use it according to His guidance, and we continue to learn and to do our best, we are in fact living the path of spirituality. So with that assumption, I want to share with you that the most important part of any conversation is the intention. The power of setting our intention before communicating is that it helps us to focus on what we want to have happen, instead of being carried away by feelings, random thoughts, distractions, or even the reactions of our listeners. And if you've been talking to anyone in your life, you know what I'm talking about. So let us now pause for a minute and get in touch with our intention for being here and learning what we will. When we become aware of our intention before we act, we are able to make wise choices that lead us to clarity, well-being, and harmony. Without the awareness of intention, we can easily end up reacting, living on autopilot, or mindlessly following old habits. When we observe our mind, we see that intention precedes every action. It's a simple intention to do so. In the same way, whatever we do or whenever we interact with someone or create something, we are acting on the more complex intentions that we've set. When our intention is to fix someone else, we will get different results from the same action than when we act from the intention to work on ourselves, to love, to connect, to serve, and to please divinity. Whenever we become mindful of our intentions, we open up to great freedom as to whether or how we want to act. Our intentions also impact our loved ones. Interpersonal neural biology shows that our brains are highly tuned to read the intentions of others. So for example, if I extend my arms towards you based on my intention, you can sense this either as a gesture of affection or as a threat. Our intentions have a powerful impact on others and help shape their responses. This is why it's so valuable to mindfully pause and check in with our intention before we act or speak. Communication then begins not on the tongue, but in the heart. Communication then begins not on the tongue, but in the heart. So let us take a moment to pause and ask ourselves, what is our best and highest and most compassionate intention for the well-being of all involved? For ourselves and for those who are in relationship with us. Research shows that clear intentions bring focus and empower all parts of our being to achieve the best results. When faced with difficult situations or important choices, we can always tune in and ask, is this choice, speech, or action following the deepest intention I've set for my life? Whenever we take the time to pause and tune into our intentions, we begin to notice an increased ability to align our life with our best goals and enhance our well-being. So as you take a seat with ease and alertness, take a moment to become present to your intention for being here. Let's set a simple intention for our time together. It might be the intention to be as fully present as you can, with all distractions shut off. Be open to new and perhaps challenging ways of thinking or being. And to be kind to ourselves and others as we experience this time together. Notice how beginning by setting a simple intention affects your experience of this workshop. And the next time we have a challenging conversation or an important communication situation, let us try setting our intentions before we communicate and see how it helps us communicate more effectively and in line with our highest intentions and in line with divine guidance. Now, as you sit quietly for the last minutes, let yourself reflect on your long-term values and how you can sense yourself living true to your best intention. My intention in being here and in sharing some reflections and learnings with you is with the hope that I can support you in connecting to your loved ones and creating a more connected and loving home, community, and world. My prayer for all of us is that the path to loving mindful communication is eased for us, and that we use what we learn to make our lives and the lives of those around us and this world a better place. My prayer for you and for myself is that we all live with positivity, purpose, and peace. Amen. And now when you're ready, you can come back into the room and open your eyes. So welcome. And it's a really, although this seems like it's just a grounding exercise, but it's probably one of the most important parts of the workshop. And that is to remind ourselves that when we're communicating, just get in touch, just pause, when we're having a difficult conversation, whether it's with our children or our spouses or other ones, if we just pause just for a second and get in touch with what we want to have happen and how we can live according to our values and according to how we understand divine guidance, it's going to change the quality of all our communication. So with that, let's talk about why we want to communicate. Most people, when we do communication workshops, they come to learn quote unquote communication skills. And the skills, like I said, are very easy. I wouldn't say easy, sorry. Let me rephrase that. They're very simple. They're not difficult. The practice of it on a regular basis is challenging, and it is a practice. It's not something that you just learn once and then it's done and you know it, right? Just like we pray Salah every day, several times a day, and at every Salah we have to focus on paying attention. Similarly, with communication and with relationships, we have to pay attention. We have to keep doing the things that are going to make it more effective. Also, if we have the intention to connect, it's fairly easy to learn the skills. And the reason why, it is important to spend a bit of time on this is because very often, when I do a lot of couples workshops, right? And when we do that, some of the people, they're really good at it. They get it. They don't need any coaching. They can do the speaker listener stuff. They can do the paraphrasing. They can do all of that. And they go home and their relationships actually become worse, right? And, for a long time, I couldn't understand why that was, because they were doing the things correctly, right? And then, it's very clear that, again, if our intention to learn is so that somebody else, we can show up someone else, or we become better at knowing how they are doing things wrong, I can almost guarantee you that learning this stuff is not going to help, right? And so this happens all the time. I mean, it happened to me for years that, when I would go away, do a workshop, get some really, cool learning, come back, try it on my family, and I would become really good at noticing how they were doing things wrong, right? And it didn't help. It actually made things much worse. So just for these couple of hours, what I suggest is, just let everyone be who they are. And, we already know we can't change anyone, though we keep trying, right? But just for these couple of hours, just focus on yourself. Have the intention that you are going to learn just for yourself, and then see what a difference it makes. Okay. So we have, like I said, a packed agenda. And what are we going to talk about? So first, we will talk about why talk more. Why is it, why are we focusing on this anyway? The second thing we're going to talk about is the types and styles of communication. And again, the idea is to understand, to look at ourselves and see what we may be doing wrong. And all of us have like a go-to kind of way we communicate, and some of it is, very effective, and some of it is not. Then we talk about what are the barriers to communication. Why is it so hard? Why is it so challenging? And if we have time, we will just do a very brief, I'll just share with you some ideas of assessing our communication. And if we don't get to that, it's not a big deal, because you will have the slides to look at later. And then the number 5 and 6 is talking more and fighting better. So fighting less, hopefully, but I cannot, it's not even a goal not to fight. Okay, so I'll say that very upfront, and we will keep coming back to this idea that if you are in argument with your family, if you are disagreeing on things, it's really not a big deal. And hopefully today we will understand why it's not a big deal and what we should focus on instead. So the spoiler alert is that we will probably not get to everything, just because this is a lot. Like, it could easily be, stuff for an entire weekend, right? So the idea again is to just get some ideas going. If you can take away 2 or 3 things, just focus on that. Just literally practice what you will take away and focus on that, rather than, a lot of people say, oh, we didn't cover this and this is what you said and we didn't. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because it's really unrealistic to imagine that we're going to cover all of this in 2 hours, still practice, do a bit of role play. So I already know that, and this is the big picture, right? And at least if we understand what the paths are, we can always, come back to it, inshallah, at another time. So why is it important to talk more? Why are we talking about this? So we know that communication is actually an essential building block of all relationships, whether it is marriage, whether it is parent-child, whether it is siblings. And very often when families are what we call distressed means they're not happy, they are suffering in many ways, they will the biggest thing they report is poor communication, right? And we know that poor communication, it leads to poor problem solving. So if you can't communicate, you obviously can't deal with stuff, because in order to, whether it is, who's going to pick up the kids, to big issues like how to manage finances, all of these require communication skills. And if we don't have the basic building blocks, then obviously it's very hard to run the enterprise of the family. Okay. Also, we know that just generally, one of the main things which make people happy is when they have good communication. So this is just some research, lots and lots of research done with how poor communication is associated with an increased risk of divorce and marital separation and more behavioral problems in children, okay? However, I cannot emphasize this more, that this is not, many people, they come and they just say, oh, our problem is communication. And communication is not really what we think it is. It's not only when we're sitting down and we want people to hear us and they're not listening to us, that's a very small part of communication, okay? So it's also very important what we're doing when we're not arguing, how we are just, and of course we'll come to all of this, okay? So why do we communicate? Why do we want to talk to each other? The first and most basic thing is to give information. Here's the children's schedule. I'm leaving for work now. The food is in the oven, that kind of stuff, okay? The second thing is to share ideas and also to guide and influence our loved ones. And parents are really good at this, or we think we're really good at this. Our default mode of communicating with our families is what? Is lecture, right? At the minute we get hold of our kids, we tell them what they're doing wrong and what they need to do better. This, like, you are really already really good at this. So I'm not going to talk about that, okay? What I would suggest is that when that's not working, we focus on other things and we do less of that, because not that it's not important, it is important. However, it should only be a small part of the way we communicate with our families, okay? The third thing, which we will spend a lot of time on, and which is the heart of communication, is to connect with other human beings and bond. This is what makes us human. This is what is hardwired into us. This is what we yearn for. We don't yearn, although we do it, what we're not, even if we lecture and our children are really obedient and they just, don't say anything and they listen and they say, yes, mama, yes, papa, whatever, right? That's not going to satisfy our soul. What's going to satisfy our soul is when we are able to share our inner worlds with our loved ones, and when when they can share their inner world with us, right? And in order to do that, we have to actually do things differently so that it's safe for them, so that they are able to open up. Very often, parents especially will come to me. They somehow, it's really sad, but people tend to give up on their marriage relationships after a while, and they just focus on the kids, right? And they say, my teenager won't speak to me. And one of the things that we will talk about, which is really important, is how do we create that environment of emotional safety so that they are able to speak to us. So we need to be connected to thrive as human beings. For babies and children, a loving, secure relationship is literally a matter of life and death. So even if we give our kids food, shelter, clothing, we keep them warm, they are in a safe environment, they will not thrive. They will not thrive because the need for human connection, for touch, for being understood, for attachment is actually a very, very basic human need. And we know, we've all heard of research studies when they do studies in orphanages, for example. I mean, of course, some places are really good, but those places who only focus on the physical aspect of the child, the children don't thrive. And it has, the way, this is such a huge subject, but just to give you some idea how important attachment is, when a child is attached to his mother, which means that the mother specifically, it can be other caregivers, also the father, but mother is usually the primary caregiver. When they respond to the child trusts them, they respond to the cries of the child, they pick them up, they soothe them. It actually changes the brain of the child. So the brain develops when a child is securely attached. And when a child is not securely attached, then they have also, it's almost guaranteed that the child will have some work to do when they grow up, work on themselves. In other words, to fulfill that deficiency of that parent-child bond. So we know that communication builds connection. How does it do that? We know that between spouses, first of all, if we are communicating well, we get to know them. We know what's going on in their heads. We know what's going on in their life, what their fears are, what their hopes are, what their dreams are. It strengthens our friendship. And a strong friendship is a very, very solid base for a marriage. It increases fondness and admiration. So if I know how my spouse is thinking, if they're sharing with me what's going on, it increases fondness and admiration for them. It definitely builds trust, because if I don't know what's going on in somebody's head, it's very hard to trust them, because I simply don't know. Trust is built on knowing, right? On knowledge. We can share hopes and dreams, and we can create shared meanings. And by the way, these are all research-based principles and paradigms on how to build a strong relationship. With children, like we said, communication builds attachment. It creates a safe haven. And by the way, our best hope for having our children close to us, for having children follow our values, is when we create a safe haven at home. When we create a safe haven at home, they don't go looking for it outside. Very often when children are building inappropriate relationships, for example, it could be with friends or with romantic partners or whatever, it's because they don't feel that safety at home. And I'm trying to use my words very carefully, because this is not about blaming parents. So very often parents are doing the best they can. They are trying, and the child is not feeling it, right? So it's both ways. I'm not, really, I'm not into blaming parents. I really have utmost compassion. I think we have a hard job, and we really do our best. When we have that loving connection and communication with children, it really helps them regulate. Regulate means their feelings. So we know that children have many big feelings. That's why they throw tantrums, for example, right? Whether they're 12 or 2 or 18. And when we are able to be that strong presence for them, it helps them regulate. It again helps them build trust and strengthen our relationship. And as children grow, by the way, our biggest leverage with them is our relationship. So when they're at home, we can really, I wouldn't say control, but we can influence them a lot more. When they go out in the world, it is more challenging, because we don't have that day-to-day or the minute-to-minute connection. And that's why if we've had a strong bond with them, it's they are much more likely to be influenced by our values, and to to continue to do what we have taught them. However, there are many, many people, experts, who say that actually the connection comes first before communication. So we know that communication is not just what you say, it's your body language, it's the vibe that you give out, and many different things. So it's, connection is not only communication. There's really interesting research, lots of stuff written about this idea that in order to build connection, you need moments of positivity resonance. Moments of positivity resonance simply means that if two people are in the same room, and I'm not talking only about spouses, it could be any two people, friends, family workers, co-workers, and they share just a happy moment together, it creates connection. So there's many, many different ways of doing that. But right now let's focus on the connection and communication. So goodwill, when you have this feeling of goodwill towards another, when you're willing to actually listen to them, when you value them, when you are curious and interested in their world, it really builds connection without you saying a single word. So again, communication begins way before we speak. Okay, and again, the key to remember is that many people that I've worked with, when they're talking about communication, they simply mean that when I say something, people should agree. Okay. And if nothing else, hopefully we'll take away this idea that that's not what communication is. Even if you have really great communication skills, it does not mean that people will always agree with you or do what you say. That's not communication. That's like a dictatorship. Okay. So again, if we are valuing the other human being, if we love them regardless of whether or not they agree with us, that's connection. And connection is actually far more important than communication, but it goes both ways, right? So we know that connection builds communication. When we're communicating well, it builds more connection. So it's like a positive circle kind of thing. With children, how do you connect? Just by being a safe and calm presence, responding to them. So if they're crying, looking at them, picking them up, just really basic things. If we are the bigger, kinder, wiser human being, even when they are falling apart, that's connection, and that's what creates safety for them. When we have a connection with our children, it's much easier to communicate because they're open to guidance. They are open to what we have to say. They respect us. And like I said, it's our greatest leverage with them. So this is what we were saying, right? That the idea is that in everything that we've talked about and we will talk about, we need to be intentional. There are many things which are toxic to family life today. And the higher the environmental toxins and things like that, the more intentional we want to be if we want to maintain that family life. And obviously we know that listening is as important as talking. We'll talk very little about listening today because I know most people are just interested in telling me how to say it so that people understand, right? But we will do a little bit of that. And again, why do we need to be intentional is because today we are more distracted than ever before. There are so many things pulling for our attention, the biggest one being our phone, for example, which is always with us. It's really hard to be connected to someone who's distracted. So again, one of the key things to remember is if we want connection with other human beings, we need to give them attention. We need to actually focus on them, so again, we need to be connected to thrive as human beings. And for babies and children, a loving, secure relationship is literally a matter of life and death. Okay, I'm talking about when they're very little. So how, what are some of the ways, what are some of the questions that we can ask ourselves, some of the things that we can reflect on to connect? The first is, do you want to feel emotionally connected to your partner? And this is something you can only answer because many times I know when I'm talking, I'm not interested in connection. I'm just interested to do what I say. Okay. And that's not connection. It's not connection, and it's pretty poor communication. Okay. So how curious are you to learn from their perspective? Do you care about how they feel right now? Do you love and value them? Is being connected more important than the topic of your conversation? So what if they didn't agree with you? Would you still be connected? Would you still want connection with them? So these are just some questions that can help us, again, set our intentions differently. And this is something we call listening with love. So first, obviously, listen, which is with your ears, eyes, and heart, to understand the other person's feelings, thoughts. And again, the goal of listening, very often, we listen only to hear enough so that we can count. Like, it's very entertaining for me. I mean, entertainment is probably not a great word, but it's very entertaining to actually watch people when they're arguing, because both people are only focused on convincing the other. No one's really listening. No one's interested in what the other person has to say. And I just invite you to look at this for yourself. When you are in the midst of a conversation and you're saying your bit and the other person is saying their bit, this happens. Like, if it doesn't happen for you, wow, like you should be teaching communication courses, right? Because this is like the human way. And the quickest way out of that is to simply switch to a listening stance. A listening stance means, just put aside your agenda for the moment and begin to really listen to what the other person has to say. So understanding means you reflect back content and feelings to show that you understand. So when in doubt, you simply repeat their words to you. So you're telling me that you're upset because when you came home, the kitchen was a mess. Okay. So you simply, and it sounds like you're very frustrated because we've had this conversation before, right? Whatever it is. And by the way, in the resources that you will get, there is a practice sheet for paraphrasing examples. So it's, you here's the thing with this, you do need to practice. Just because we've talked about it once, it doesn't mean that you're going to get good at it, right? The only way to get good at it is simply to play with it. And you can play with your kids, you can play with your spouse, you can play on your own. So when you're talking to your coworkers, just practice paraphrasing back what they say, and you will be the most loved human being because people love when you get them, okay? Validate. So express empathy even when you disagree, which means that say, a clean entrance or a clean kitchen is far more important to my spouse than it is to me, right? I don't get it. I don't understand why it is so important to them. And I never will. Unless I really listen to them and ask questions, I'm never going to understand that, right? But I can understand that it is a cause of frustration for them. And I can express empathy for that. So I can say, yes, I really get that, it is very important for you. You can't think straight when the house is in order. I wouldn't say that your OCD acts up, but, the idea is to understand that this, very often when couples are coming to me, they will say, I don't know why they make such a big deal about it, right? Oh, it's such a big deal to them. And that's, that's a really, when something is important to our spouses, it's almost guaranteed it's not going to be that important to us, because all of us have different views of the world, right? We all, for some people, cleanliness is really important. For some people, being on time is really important. For some people, having, talking to each other, so we all have different needs. If something is important to our spouse, even if we can't understand it, we should at least respect the fact that it is important to them without minimizing it. When we minimize it, that's when we get into trouble. That's when this lack of connection, lack of communication. Because if I don't really care about why something is important to my spouse, why will they, talk to me about it or tell me more? So for many people have seen this movie. It is from Inside Out, and I hope it works. So what I want you to notice is the connection between them, okay? So notice how they're communicating, notice their body language, notice, just notice, and then we'll have a short discussion on it.
So, as it turns out, the green trash can is not recycling. It's for greens, like compost and eggshells. And the blue one is recycling. And the black one.
Riley's acting so weird. Why is she acting so weird?
What do you expect? All the islands are down.
Joy would know what to do.
That's it. Until she gets back. We just do what Joy would do.
Great idea. Anger, fear, disgust. How are we supposed to be happy?
Hey, Riley, I've got the good news. I found a junior hockey league right here in San Francisco, and get this, tryouts are tomorrow after school. What luck, right?
Hockey. What do we do?
Guys, here, you pretend to be Joy.
Wouldn't it be great to be back out on the ice?
Oh yeah, that sounds fantastic.
What was that? That wasn't anything like Joy.
Because I'm not Joy?
Yeah, no kidding.
Did you guys pick up on that?
Something's wrong.
Should we ask her?
Let's probe, but keep it subtle so she doesn't notice. So, how was the first day of school?
She's probing us.
I'm done. You pretend to be Joy.
What? Okay,
It was fine, I guess. I don't know. Oh, very smooth. That was just like Joy.
Something is definitely going on. She's never acted like this before. What should we do? We're going to find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband. Ahem.
She's looking at us. What did she say? What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening. Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
He's making that stupid face again.
I could strangle him right now.
Signal him again.
So, Riley, how was school?
Are you kidding me?
For this, we gave up that Brazilian helicopter pilot.
School was great, all right?
Riley, is everything okay?
Sir, she just rolled her eyes at us. What is her deal? All right, make a show of force. I don't want to have to put the foot down. No, not the foot. Lee, I do not like this new attitude. Oh, I'll show you attitude. No. Stay happy.
What is your problem? Just leave me alone.
Sir, reporting high levels of sass. Take it to DEFCON 2. You heard that, gentlemen? DEFCON 2. Listen, young man, I don't know where this disrespectful attitude came from. You want me for this?
Yeah, well,
Here it comes. Prepare the foot. He's the second position. Command, sir. Fire! That's it. Go to your room. Now. Foot is down. The foot is down. Gentlemen, that could have been a disaster.
Well, that was a disaster.
Okay. Comments. Can we have a little bit of audience interaction? What did you notice? Does this seem familiar, first of all? And what could they have done differently? So let's focus the discussion on this, right? What could any of them, right? You can choose. So just say mom could have done this differently, dad could have done this differently. It would be very easy as parents to pick on the child and say they could have done something differently, but let's focus on the parents, right? So comments.
So we have a comment from saying very familiar. For those who would like to speak, can you unmute yourself and engage?
Assalamu alaikum. So I just noticed that obviously at the dinner table, the mom's just making observations from her side. Some things that she noticed, but it sounds as a complaint to everybody on the dinner table. And dad doesn't want to probably listen to the complaining or the nagging. So he's disconnected himself and while disconnected.
Can you stop there? So tell me what sounded like a complaint.
I think more like when she's talking about the green bin stuff and all that, I think, like, so it's just observations that she has because that matters to her. I guess, but it doesn't really matter to other people. So they're just kind of disconnecting themselves from it because it comes across as a complaint.
Okay.
Am I right?
Okay, great. So stop there and I'm going to give some feedback, right? So this, when we make a comment or a comment on something that is important to us or something that we notice, something that's going on, we call it a bid for connection. It's a bid for connection. In other words, to me, it didn't sound like, again, maybe I was listening to it from a different way, but it sounded like a bid for connection. A bid for connection is, oh, so I notice, oh, it's raining today, or it is, the house is kind of, it could be anything, right? And it's very interesting to view it. And at first, we always learn something, that when we are highly tuned to expecting something from somebody else, we may see it as a complaint. And then what happens is we switch off and we have this interpretation that there she goes again complaining, right? But in families, we make bids for connection all the time. So again, in your own family, notice a bid for connection. A bid for connection, again, simply making a comment on something and you can respond to it in 3 different ways. The first way is you can ignore it, which they did, right? They simply ignored it, missed it. They carried on what they were doing. The second way is to turn against, which means that you say something like, there you go, complain again, stop it already, I'm fed up of hearing this, right? Now, if we get that response, we're not likely to ever say that thing again because we've been punished for making that bid for connection. The third way is to turn towards the other person, which is to simply say, yeah, it is the green bin, or is it? I thought last week was the green bin and this week is garbage. Okay. The principle that we need to take away from this is that, again, in many families, everyone makes bids for connections, and the people who are happily together will notice and accept more bids for connection than people who are distressed, right? So this family, obviously the positive thing about them is that they're eating together. That's a really good sign. And however, their body language, if you just look at where the video is stopped, is you can see the mom is looking slightly up. She is looking for ways to connect with her family, and they're completely shut off, right? So they're looking down, and this could be, we don't know anything else, at least from this little clip, but it could be that there's been a history of either nagging or complaining, like you said, or simply that they're too distracted. The daughter is obviously going through some challenges at school. So great, thank you. Some other comments on what you noticed?
We have two comments on the chat. Dad could have been more present.
Okay.
And complaining from mom or dad being not connected emotionally, which was Zera's.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, I guess one way, and I have to relook at it because it's amazing, right? And that's how we really learn. That's why I love doing these things, is because you always look at a different aspect which you had missed. So the way I was looking at it is that she's making a bid for connection, and he tried to respond, right? So when she made that signal, I signaled to him. He said, oops, what have I done wrong? Oh, okay, maybe I'm supposed to ask the child. So he did his normal thing, how was school? So obviously nobody had really listened to the child, that she'd had a really hard day, but they were focused on telling her, their own stuff rather than listening, and what happened to her. So how did the child respond? She got angrier and angrier, right? And that's a very, very normal response. When you see your child is angry, it's very often because they have not been listened to, they have not been validated, they're not feeling understood. So, one thing that this entire family could have done, any of them, is just take a breath, pause, and ask, sorry, we missed that. What's going on for you? Like open-ended questions rather than, and then, of course, this is what we do as parents. The first minute we notice our child is being what we consider disrespectful or whatever, we up the game. We put the foot down, right? That this is not acceptable behavior, and now go to your room. Fine. If we continue to do that, we will probably gain obedience in the short term. We are not going to gain connection. That's not going to happen. The only way to really connect is actually to find out what is going on for her. Why is she upset? And it's, that takes some, especially as parents, it takes some skill. So if there are other comments or questions on this, otherwise we can move on.
We have mom's comment was like an icebreaker to get family involved.
Okay. Yes, definitely. So it is an icebreaker, and that's exactly what a bid for connection is, right? It is a way to start talking. So sometimes, if, for example, I'm reading something and it's funny, I'm laughing. Okay. Now I'm laughing that what I want them to do is ask me, why are you laughing? What's funny? That's my bid for connection, is laughing. Okay. And if somebody asks me, so tell me, mom, or tell me whatever, right? What is going on? Like, what's so funny? I'm happy to share. That's an invitation for connection. It's an invitation for communication. And the more of these we notice in our family, the better our connection and communication is going to be. Okay. So again, think really small. Whenever we think of communication, we think of these big things. Okay. How to stop fights and how to get people to just do what we say. And what I'm suggesting is that communication is all of these other things. When we are used to paying attention to other people, when we accept their bids for connection, they are much more likely to be receptive to, you know, when we have something important to say, right? But when those bids haven't been accepted, our emotional bank accounts are empty and we are not interested in what other people have to say. So types and styles of communication, okay? We'll move through this pretty quickly. Business talk in families is simply, you know, again, who's picking up the groceries, what is our agenda for the day, the things that keeps us going, okay? Sharing values and guiding. This is what parents' default position, right? This is when we lecture. This is what you need to do, this is what we believe in, and you know, a lot of times families stop at the business talk and the guiding. And the other two parts are actually more important. When you do those well, then these go much easier. So conflict talk is how do you bring up issues? How do you talk when you are you know, not getting along? And you know, very often we think, okay, as parents, you know, when we're not getting along, we should protect our children from all of this and just fight in private, right? And that's not necessarily needs to be done. We need to remember that when we are, you know, whether or not children are watching, right? Our communication and our talk has to be respectful. So it doesn't mean if the kids are not watching, you know, we can say all sorts of name calling, and which is what people do, right? And they think, oh, it's behind closed doors, kids are not watching. That's really, we are fooling ourselves, because kids pick up on the emotional climate of the home very, very quickly, okay? And the last and the most important way of communicating or function of conversation in family is bonding talk, is attachment talk, is how we connect to each other. So again, you know, a point of reflection for us as we move through the week, as we move through the days, you know, when your family is gathered around the dinner table, when you are talking to each other, just notice, you know, where is that talk? Is it business talk? Is it sharing values? Is it conflict talk? Is it bonding talk? And by the way, all of these are necessary. I'm not saying one is better than the other. That's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying that it has to be a balance. So if all you're doing, and this is what happens, when families are distressed, there'll be very little bonding talk. Okay, there'll only be either conflict talk or business talk. And, you know, and when people have given up on each other, then it's only business talk, okay? Style of communication. So I'm hoping that some of us will see ourselves in this. Clear and direct is obviously a good way to communicate. It simply means clear, means I'm telling you what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I want, and I am directing it so everyone knows who I'm talking to. So son, I'm disappointed that you forgot to update my phone software today without my having to remind you. Clear, you know, I'm telling him I'm disappointed. So, you know, sometimes we get this into this thing, oh, we should only talk positive. And in our idea of positivity is that we shouldn't bring up anything negative. That's not great communication. If you don't have a way to talk about conflict, then you will get into trouble, okay? So it's okay to share feelings with the other person. Clear and indirect. So I'm not directing, you know, when people are around me, people are wondering, who is she talking to, right? So it's disappointing when people forget to complete their chores. So people could be anyone. And then masked and direct. So son, people don't work as hard as they used to, right? So now people are really confused. My family doesn't know what I'm talking about. They don't know who I'm talking to. Everyone knows that someone's in trouble, but who it is and what for, they have no idea. And then, of course, the most troublesome is the masked and indirect. So the youth of today are very lazy. Aajkal ke bacche, right? We've all said that, right? Aajkal ke bacche. Now, what happens? So what's the trouble with this? Like, what happens when we talk in a way that is masked or indirect? Any ideas? Like, what is the problem with it? So if no one else, maybe the panel can chime in. So, you know, one of the challenges for me, I would share on doing an online thing, because when I work with people, I'm really used to a lot of interaction, okay? Mm-hmm. And I've obviously had to redo a lot of things so that, you know, it's viable for an online audience. But still, you know, this is a workshop, which means that we need to think. It's not something I'm cooking and let me put this on, right? We're so used to doing that, right? A lecture in the background, which we're not really engaged with. So, you know, challenge yourself. What is, even if you don't want to share your style, what's the problem when we engage in masked or indirect communication?
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel the person you are talking to doesn't know that you're talking to that person. Like the message doesn't land. If you do it, aajkal ke bache, it's a general thing. Yeah. You've not told anybody anything. You're just talking.
Exactly. And it's a little bit more than that, even, right? So people know that somebody's in trouble, like they know you're not happy, but it's very passive aggressive, right? So it actually causes a lot of resentment from people when you are talking like that, because I know, you know, when I try this on my kids, they get really upset. Like, what is your problem? You know, if we've done something, just tell us and get it over with, you know, because here, because we're not telling anyone directly, nobody's going to take responsibility. They will all feel uncomfortable when they're around us, right? And when people are feeling uncomfortable around us, there's no emotional safety. They are not going to, it's not going to build connection or communication, right? So it will
we have some comments here.
Okay, go ahead.
We have, it causes confusions and misunderstanding. The communication isn't clear and the message doesn't land. It irritates the opposite person more. The message is lost. A lack of communication. I think it may be misunderstood sometimes. And generalizes is counterproductive. It causes more often than not, more heartaches, mental distress, and opens up more assumptions. It creates anger in the inside of a person.
Excellent. Very, very good points. And all of those are really valid, right? So again, when we catch ourselves, and we all do it, right? The idea is to always remember, speak to the person who you need to, and to say what you want, you know, be open. And if you're upset about something, it's a really good practice to say it in a way that's respectful. You know, you don't need to scream or shout or use bad language, but it's perfectly okay to say, when you do this, it's really upsetting for me. You know, when you're late, it's frustrating because I've made dinner, it's getting cold, and it's frustrating. The more open and honest you are about sharing your feelings, it builds trust. So people know where they stand with you and they feel safe. Even if they're in trouble, like, you know, very often when the kids were younger, they would say, you know what, it's when we've done something wrong and you don't say anything, it drives us crazy. Like, just say it. Just say what you're upset about and, you know, let's move on. When we don't say it, it's actually, it creates a toxic environment in families. So moving on, why don't we? You know, what are some of the reasons that we find it so challenging to, you know, to speak our mind or to say? So there's many, many things. One, the simplest thing could be just a history of relationship with the other person. So when we're talking about grown-ups, there could be, you know, baggage, right? Things that we've experienced from them, maybe they haven't. So like going back to the little clip that we watched, obviously this family has a history with each other. So it could be that, you know, fathers used to the mother complaining, or the mother's used to the father tuning her out, or it could be anything, right? We have our own personal baggage. So for example, if I've never been allowed to speak up at home, I've never really seen conflict. You know, my parents always, discuss stuff in private. I never really know how we're supposed to talk about things when we don't agree. Or it could be that when they disagreed, they did it in such a unproductive fashion that I say, okay, you know what, I'm never going to bring up anything. Let's just, peace at all costs, right? It could be the relationship toxins, which we talk about. It could be flooding. So I could be triggered. I could be so upset that I don't know how to say it. Not being listened to, obviously, is a very big one, and self-protection. So it's challenging. It is vulnerable when we put ourselves out there. So if, for example, people forget my birthday, okay, and it's hurt me, it's upsetting me, and I don't speak up. Why? Because if I do, I am making myself vulnerable. I'm sharing what's going on inside of me, and that's hard. And in a family, the more vulnerable we are, the better the connection. You cannot have connection when you are focused on self-protection. It just does not work, okay? Of course, it could be just simply distraction. We are all too into our phones than into each other. But the biggest thing is what is marked in red here, and that is lack of emotional safety. A lot of these things go back to that, right? That I don't feel emotionally safe. If I share something, I may have been, told off for it in the past, minimized, invalidated, whatever it is. I am not feeling that I have the ability to say things that I really believe, that I feel, and it will be taken in a respectful way.
Papa?
Ji.
Well, you said about the safety, the safe space, right? That because of the history, so you would not. So we have a comment here.
Okay.
Sometimes you do not have courage to be open because of the past experience of the table to be turned on you.
Yes.
Quite most of the time.
Yes, and that is true. That's the history, right? That's the history, that's self-protection, that is all of those things, right? And again, obviously we can't cover everything in one go, but, just to put it very briefly, the more we focus, so if somebody says, one of the way tables turn, I'm assuming, is defensiveness, or the idea that if we say something, people say, well, what about you? You do this, right? And we, once we start practicing good communication for ourselves, we can then say, you know what, let's talk about that another time. Right now, I am, talking about how I'm hurt when we, when you forgot my birthday. Okay. So again, we cannot change other people. We can focus on ourselves and do what we can to improve our communication. The thing with relationships is that when we do that, though, the vast majority of times things change around. Because when you change the pattern or the cycle by yourself in a relationship, others have to adjust. They can't keep doing what they were doing because it doesn't work anymore, right? So let's talk about more about emotional safety and what we mean by that. Okay, so what are some of the toxins that poison? I call them relationship poisons, because when you, and by the way, again, to make it, all of us do these at some point. Okay. The idea is that not that we never do them, that we do them less than we do, right? And we keep making repairs. So if we notice ourselves doing it, now that we know it's a toxin, hopefully we'll do less of it, okay? So please don't panic when you say, oh my God, I criticize or I do this, okay? First thing is criticism and escalation. Criticism means that we focus on the person's character, not their behavior. So when we walk in the room and we see socks lying on the floor, instead of saying, it upsets me that there are socks on the floor, we say, you're so lazy, no one respects me in this house. We make it way bigger than it needs to be. And when we say things like that, when we say you're lazy, you're disrespectful, it's actually giving the other person no information of what you actually want. So if you walk in and the room is a mess and you say, it really upsets me when I've just done laundry and I see socks on the floor, please put them in the bin or in the, hamper. That's actually giving a person information. And here's the thing, Does it mean that they will? No, it does not mean that. What it does mean is that it will not poison your relationship. So even if it doesn't happen, you have more of a chance of it happening. Even if it doesn't happen, it means that you can still, have a good relationship. Contempt and invalidation. Contempt means that you notice that there's something different about the other person and you invalidate it, you look down upon it. So one thing is that, you walk in, there are socks on the floor and you say, who does that? Like what kind of slob lives like this? So not only are you criticizing, but you're also showing a lot of contempt for the other person, that, who is this, right? And when we can do this, by the way, without saying a single word, we can say this just with our eyes, when we roll our eyes, or we think, there she goes again, she's just like this, or he's just like that. Contempt is a huge thing. In fact, there's some research that when women in particular live with contempt, they have a much lower immunity, they fall sick more often. It's hard. It's hard on our nervous systems to live with contempt. Defensiveness. So this is what the other person, somebody mentioned, right? That the tables are turned. So if you bring up something, you get if somebody brings up something, you get defensive and you counterattack, right? So if somebody says there are socks on the floor, you say, well, look at your own desk. That's a mess too, right? Who are you to tell me? So not taking responsibility and, blaming the other person, all of these things are defensiveness. Stonewalling. So stonewalling simply means emotionally disconnected from the conversation. If you say something, they will just be like stone faced, right? No comment, nothing. And very often men are more likely to stonewall than women, and there is a good reason for that. Many women think, they just don't care, nothing impacts them, they're emotionally dead. And what research shows actually is that for conflict for men is much harder on their physiology than for women. So if you were to, and with couples, we do this sometimes, right? We will, in our office, we will put pulse oximeters, which now everyone's familiar with thanks to COVID. We put pulse oximeters on them. And when there is fighting or conflict going on, the man's physiology will be off the roof. So his heart rate, his blood pressure, everything will be way higher than the woman, and it will take longer to come down. And the reason that he is stonewalling very often is because he is trying hard to contain himself and not react in a bad way. We really need to know this. Why? Because if we understand that the reason why he's doing this is to fight less. And that's where the title of the talk comes from. That, and to put it very, very crudely, this is not, I try not to generalize in genders like this, but just to take an example, a woman wants to talk more. So she keeps connecting and the man wants to fight less. So when he notices there's escalation going on, there's criticism going on, there's invalidation, what does he do? He shuts down. Why does he shut down? Because he doesn't want to fight. And when he doesn't want to fight, he is stonewalling. What she does is that she escalates more to get a reaction from him. The more she escalates, the more he stonewalls, and there they go. It's a pattern, it's a cycle. It's probably the most common pattern in relationships. You may have heard of it described as the pursuer and the distancer. So one person is always bringing up the issues. By the way, even in happy relationships, it's women who generally bring up issues. Men just tend to want to keep the peace and not really talk about stuff. They'll just adapt to whatever is going on. Women want the relationship to be better. They want to do better, so they bring up issues. In happy relationships, a man will respond, and in distressed relationships, he will stonewall, he will counterattack, he will become defensive. So that's the difference. And then another toxin is negative interpretations, which means that when a person is saying something, you interpret it more negatively than they intended. Okay, and so we have a role play on this just to get an idea of what we're talking about. So if we are ready, I will just introduce it. So is Mumtaz auntie still here? Because I don't see her.
Who?
Is Mumtaz auntie still here?
Yes. Bye.
I'm right here.
Okay, okay,
Right
good.
here, Marcia.
Okay,
Yeah.
so are you and who's doing this?
Me.
Okay.
I'm doing it.
Okay, and who's Babar and who's Maryam?
Mumtaz Bai is Baba.
Okay. So I'm talking to the audience now. This is Babar and Maryam have just come home after a long and hard day for both people. So here is a normal conversation that they have. So Babar, can you please start?
Sure. What should we do for dinner tonight?
Why is it always my job to make dinner?
It is not always your job to make dinner. I made dinner last week.
Yeah, bringing home pizza and chips is not making dinner, okay?
Just forget it. I didn't want to go out with you anyway.
You never said anything about wanting to go out.
Yes, I did. I asked you where you wanted to go out to dinner, and you got all snotty.
I got all snooty? You never said anything about going out.
Did too.
Did not?
Did too.
You are never wrong, are you?
Never.
Okay, and off they go to a wonderful evening of anger, frustration, and distance, right? So hopefully some of us recognize this is a very common thing, right? So what happened here? First of all, was Babar clear in what he said? No. He said, what should we do for dinner tonight? What was he doing? Now, if you look at it a couple of ways, right? First, it could be that he was making a bid for connection, a bid for attention, number one. Number two, it could be that he is very used to self-protection. Why? Because he's used to getting probably some sort of either defensiveness or contempt from his wife, and therefore he is just checking out the scene. Right? He's not really saying what he wants to do, what he would like to do, and very, very often, this is so common, right? I wonder what that movie is like. Is that clear? No, it's a bid for connection, it's a bid for attention, but it's not clear. It's not clear what we want, right? So now let's see, and of course, there's a lot of negative interpretations going on. When he says, what should we do for dinner tonight, Maryam automatically makes it a negative interpretation that he is asking her that what is she made for dinner tonight, right? Although that was not his intention, that was not his motivation, but again, there's obviously some history in this relationship. And so now let's do the role play again, and I will talk about what is going on in their head, and then they can say what the words that come out, okay? So here's Babar, he comes in thinking, I would really like to go out with Maryam tonight, and he says,
what should we do for dinner tonight?
So Maryam hears, when will dinner be ready? And obviously she's heard this many times before, so she says,
why is it always my job to make dinner?
So now Babar hears something negative. Why is she being such a so-and-so, he thinks. And he says,
it is not always your job to make dinner. I made dinner last week.
So now obviously Babar is quite upset, right? Because he had wanted something positive. His intention was good. He thought he would have a nice evening out with his wife, but it turned around very, very quickly, right? So, and now the negative cycle continues, and Maryam tends to feel that she does everything around the house. So she says,
yeah, bringing home pizza and chips is not making dinner.
So can you see how this is like masked, indirect communication, okay? She's not really telling him that, you know what, I could use some help. Like, I'm feeling a bit resentful because I feel like I'm doing more of the thing. So she just says, bringing home pizza and chips is not making dinner. So Babar obviously has no clue why she's so upset. He's frustrated, and he just gives up saying,
just forget it. I didn't want to go out with you anyway.
Now Maryam is really confused. Like, she's saying, but he never said anything about going out. And she's probably feeling a little bit guilty right now. Okay, so she says,
you never said anything about wanting to go out?
So now Babar is really angry. Okay, why is she being like this? Like he's trying to take his wife out for dinner. And he says then,
yes, I did. I asked you where you wanted to go out to dinner and you got all snotty.
So now Mariam is even more upset because he cannot believe that he's blaming her for this. So she says,
I got all snooty? You never said anything about going out.
and then of course they said, yes, you did, and no, you didn't. So the last bit, what they're doing is playing what we call the memory matching game. The memory matching game, couples, families play it all the time. They will say, this is what happened, and the other person will say, no, this is not what happened, this is what happened, right? And here's the thing, that in relationship, two people will remember things differently, and that is the reason why it is not useful to play the memory matching game. It's not useful. You're not going to win it. Okay, so to just have a very brief comment that any of these people, right? So very common that conversations like this go off track. You start out and the other person says, no, that's not what I meant, I'm trying to be good to you, and you're being like this, right? And what you can remember and take away from this is that you can repair at any time. You can pause and say, oops, okay, let's try that again. Did you want to go out? Is that what you were saying? So you see, they could have, now the thing is that if any of these people had given up their desire to be right in the moment and given up the memory matching, they could have had a nice evening. But because this was a cycle and they continued to do what they did, what happened was that their evening was ruined and possibly the next couple of days, right? And if we just remind ourselves that, you know what, okay, we messed up, let's try again. So happy couples, happy families are not those who make no mistakes. They're not those who do everything right. They're the ones who learn to repair on a continuous basis. They learn to apologize. They learn to, backtrack and say, you know what, yeah, you're right, let's start again, I'm sorry. Okay, how are we doing for time?
We have one half an hour,
40 minutes.
Right. Okay, so let's keep going. I'm just wondering, how much more conversation we can have, but I think let's move on and then we can see. So again, making it safe to connect means what? So if we stay away from the toxins, right? If we don't criticize, invalidate, be defensive, stonewall, then people will want to talk to us. And when people feel safe in talking, they will do more of it. And that's how we build connection and communication. So this was the role play we just did. Now I'm going to speed through this one just because you have it, and it's simply a matter, it's like a checklist, right? What does good communication in families look like? We have opportunities to connect every day. We talk about things that matter. So, going back to the clip we saw, things that matter would really be what the child is going through at that point. Like that's something important that's going on in her life. But they're talking about the garbage, and he is concerned about whether he left out the toilet seat, and they're not really talking about things that really matter. We're not afraid of disagreement. So people who talk well, who communicate well, they disagree. It's not about always being on the same page, quote unquote. We listen to each other, we repair our communication when it goes off track. That's really important. We respect each other's point of view. We enjoy family discussions and all things considered. So we don't put down people. We don't, sarcasm. If we are upset about something, we say we're upset and give people the ability or the opportunity to apologize, right? And to make things, because here's the thing, when we don't do that, when we're upset, but we hold it in and we will not share what we're upset about, the other person has no opportunity. They have no opportunity to make things right. And unless we are really, work on ourselves, it's unlikely that we will let go. So, that's how we build up steadily build up like a stockpile of resentment. So now we're going to be talking about creating opportunities for talking. What do we mean by creating opportunities for talking? Given that our lives are so busy, given that we're all distracted, that so many things are pulling for our attention, if we want to improve family connections, communication, we need to understand that it's not going to happen automatically. We actually have to focus, we have to pay attention, we have to make it a priority. Okay. So again, the idea that we need to be intentional in creating opportunities, otherwise it's not going to happen. So what are some of the things we can do? The first thing is we can eat together on a regular basis. Again, if this was a longer workshop, we would do a whole segment on how and why this is so important and how to make dinner time pleasant. But to put it very briefly, we need to be very intentional about the fact that dinner time, if we want it to be a place of connection, it needs to be sacred. Sacred time, sacred space. In other words, no nagging. And this is not the time, okay, now I've got the children, let me tell them everything they've done wrong throughout the day, and no tech. So no tech means no phones, no TV. When kids are young and we make it a priority, it just becomes automatic, right? If they're older, it's still possible to do it. Definitely, it just takes a little bit longer. It takes longer and it's more work, but it's definitely possible to change things around at any point, right? So again, frequency is important, means even if you can't do it every day. I know probably in places like, at least I've heard this, that in East Africa, for example, life is quote unquote slower, that people actually make time for things that matter. And we know in North America, it's just a crazy pace of life. Very often, 5 members of the family, they're all working, they all have different schedules, and they are not in the same place at any given time. And the second point to remember is that we need to synchronize our timings. Again, it's not going to happen automatically. So rituals such as eating together, such as connecting before you leave for work, connecting when you get home from work. The idea, this is the mantra of good relationships, is small things often. Doesn't need to be big things, Unfortunately, social media, popular culture always focuses on the big things, like grand gestures, and makes us feel that, if we're not doing, if you're not skywriting our proposal in the sky, when we are proposing to a loved one, we are somehow falling short. Real relationships are not like that. What you do on a regular day matters way, way more than what you do once a year, or what you do, once in a while. So synchronize your timings. Very often, I think women tend to be, very often we use, so if you've been working during the day, bedtime, we will sit and watch YouTube videos. So we'll catch up on Instagram, or we will catch up on, dramas, if that's what we're into. And not a good way to build connection or communication, right? And here's the thing, sometimes we do it because we're feeling lonely in the relationship and we don't feel that connection, and so we reach for something else. Very often we distract ourselves, and it's a vicious cycle. So the more we distract ourselves, the more we turn to other things than to our loved ones to satisfy our need for human interaction and connection. It's going to only get worse, right? So synchronizing your timings mean go to bed at the same time as much as you can, eat at the same time, be in the same space, with your family members. Sharing stories. So sharing stories means that you go first. Children love to hear about where they came from, where their parents came from, where their grandparents came from. There's a lot of research on how sharing stories, multi-generational stories, really increases children's sense of identity, sense of self-esteem, sense of confidence. It makes them feel good about themselves when they know what is their history. And the oscillating family narrative means that you don't only have to talk about the good things. So it's okay to share about, about people who didn't make good decisions, who got into trouble, who, things don't, like who lost homes, or there was a season of poverty, of distress. That's okay. You don't only have to quote unquote talk positive things, right? I remember doing one workshop where I said, it's like if an uncle went to jail, it's okay to mention that. And a few people came up to me after the workshop and they said, were you talking about us? Because our uncle did actually go to jail. So no, I'm not talking about anyone in particular, but these are things that happen in families, and secrets are not a good idea. They don't, they cause a lot of distance, emotional distance. And, if something major has happened in your family, it's a good idea to talk about it. And if your children hear it from you, it builds trust, right? And the last point, the most important point, is that we need to keep the door open. Means that we need to open the door for conversations, not shut it down. How do we do this? Again, we will do a role play to see this. It's we do it unknowingly, right? So this role play is called...
it's for Shabir Kalfan and Nilam Jiva.
Okay, so are you all ready?
Shabir, Nilam?
I'm here.
Okay, is...
Shabir?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the scene is that a teenager, so are you the teenager, Shabir bhai?
Yeah, fortunately.
Okay, so he comes home from school, slams the fridge door, and while the mother is on the phone. And the mom says,
you have to slam things around like that. What is wrong with you?
So he's obviously upset.
Don't ask. You don't want to know. School is what is wrong.
All right, what happened?
I don't like school. I want to quit.
I think we better talk about this when I'm not quite so exhausted.
I don't want you to do anything. I'm just telling you. I'm quitting school.
No, you are not. Don't be silly. You don't mean that.
So he gives her a piece of paper.
Take this paper.
So now you think you're getting a job? That's crazy. Where did you get this idea from?
It's not crazy. Samir has got a job. He's doing great. He's making so much money.
Yeah, right. Doing great. We all know where he's headed. He's a pothead. He washes car all day for a living. What kind of future is that? I don't know why we let you run around with him in the first place.
Mom, first of all, you cannot choose my friends. And you have no right to call them potheads. You don't even know them that well. And second of all, he just bought a new car.
All right, go ahead, get a job, get a car, get a house, get a wife, get a refrigerator, and get all your responsibilities that come with being an adult. But not until you are 18 and not until you have graduated from high school.
I'm not going to school next year, and you cannot make me go. You never listen to me. You never let me do anything I want.
Okay, hang on. Maybe you should take a break from school. Is that what you want?
Mom, I don't know.
Okay, thank you for that. Well done, really well done. So, very, very relatable situation, right? When children come to us and they tell us something, what happens is parental anxiety goes through the roof. I can just imagine being in this mother's shoes. The son has come in, and what is she thinking? What's going on in her head? She's panicking, right? She's saying, oh my God, he's going to quit school. He's going to become he's going to be on the streets. right? So her mind has gone from 0 to 100, and you can see the panic in her thing. Obviously, he is confused more than anything else. He hasn't decided anything, but she's doing what she always does, which is, tell him you can't do this and just setting down the law. And that's not what this child needs right now. So let's fast forward a little bit. Mom's had some training. She has had some training in listening, in validating, in reflecting back, in managing her own anxiety, in setting intentions. And she has been given 2 directions. One is to reflect back content and feeling. So just focus on listening. The biggest problem we have is that we think if we really listen to the other person, we are giving them permission, that we are agreeing with what they're saying, that they're going to go ahead. And this is not what that means, okay? The problem is that when we give direction and tell them what to do, lay down the law before we've really seen where they're coming from, they're not listening. They're not listening, and they will just likely give up. They're not going to be speaking to us, okay? So two instructions for mom is that reflect back content and feeling. Just be the listener just for a little while. You're not giving him permission. You're just trying to understand where he's coming from. So the goal of this conversation is simply to understand what's happening in his life, okay? And to help you, just ask for open-ended questions for clarification. And your goal and the idea is to keep him talking. Because if he shuts down, you've lost him. You don't know what he's doing. You don't know where he's coming from. So just encourage him to talk. And the way you can do this is manage your anxiety, take a breath, just notice what's happening. If there's feelings arising inside you, that's fine. You don't need to act on them. Just keep coming back, focus, bring your attention back to what he's saying, and, ask open-ended questions. So, and whatever's written in the parentheses, so I'm going to, stop you when you're talking, and I'm going to reflect back for the audience what's going on. So, Mom, please start.
Raza, I sense that you really don't know what you want to do. Raza.
I just don't know. I'm so confused.
It's hard for you to talk about it?
You're not going to tell Dad, are you?
So, Mom, remember, just reflect content and feeling. What is he feeling right now?
So you're worried that Dad might find out?
Might as well tell him. I know he's going to find out anyways. I don't think he's going to like what he sees.
So Mom is thinking, I'm not so sure I'm going to like it either. So Mom, go ahead.
You're worried that Dad's not going to like this?
Yeah, Mom. I don't think he will like the fact that I'm flunking, Mom. He's going to say, I told you so, like always, They made me take this test last week. I wasn't even prepared. It puts me at the 4th grade reading level. I don't even know what they were testing. I wasn't ready for it.
So Mom's thinking, oh my God, now my kid's reading challenged. How did this happen? Like, we gave him all the resources, right? What kind of a mother am I? So we make it everything about ourselves, right? Where did I fail? Where did I go wrong? And now his dad is going to say, it's all because I went back to work. So obviously Mom is dealing with some guilt around her going back to work. She thinks it's all my fault. Oh my God, it's all my fault. So take a pause, remind yourself that this is not about me. Let's focus on what is he saying? What is he feeling?
You really are stressed, huh?
Yeah, Mom. I don't know what to do. The counselor told me that I have to pick up my reading, or else I'm going to end up in one of those stupid remedial classes next semester.
Okay, so you're embarrassed. You're afraid that you are not going to improve your reading on time, and you don't want to take that remedial class. Is that it?
I might as well just quit. I don't want to quit. What about college, Mom?
Oh my God, now Mom's really panicking. Oh my God, if he quits, what's going to happen? What do I say?
You obviously don't know what to do. You want to keep your options open for college, but you don't know how to fix your reading. It's kind of like a rock and a hard place.
Exactly. What am I going to do? What would you do, Mom?
See how different it is? Now he feels like mom is on the same side. She's actually trying to get what he's saying. So now, as soon as our children ask us for advice, what happens? We say, oh my God, he wants to hear my advice now. I'm so excited as a mother, right? I have so many pearls of wisdom, and automatically, like, my instinct is to go into lecture mode, right? I can tell him that trials are going to make him stronger, that he should keep, and how all the imams did sabr, and how he should do sabr, and how he should keep going. And oh my God, I sound just like my mother. Oh my God. So meanwhile, Raza says,
Mom, hello.
because he realizes that she's now off in her own world, right? She's no longer connected to him.
Son, are you asking for my help?
No, I guess I know what I have to do. Yeah, of course. I'm asking, what would you do?
Well, I think we would consider my options. What have you thought of?
Well done, mother. Well done. So instead of giving him the solution that she would have done, she comes back and she says, you know what, you can do this. Now she's showing takes very, very hard, right? But she's showing confidence in his ability, because honestly, we need to have faith that our children have picked up something that we've been telling them for so many years, right? And at least let's listen to if the solutions or the options come from them, it is far, far more likely that they will follow them, that they will, if we just tell them what to do, we are actually disabling them. So Raza, go ahead.
I don't know.
I do have a couple of ideas. Shall we brainstorm together?
Like what?
What? We could go see your school counselor.
No way, Mom. I don't want my friends to see you walking into the counselor's office. I'll be the laughing stock. Come on. Might as well put a sign around my neck. Idiot loser.
So now she's thinking, oops, I blew that one. And see, this is what happens when we give them solutions. What they are doing is they have their lawyer hat out on, and they are trying to find problems with every solution, right? Now, if the solution comes from them, then we can say, yeah, that might work, or have you considered how that might work? So Mom, go ahead.
Okay, counseling is not an option. Let's see what else. How about a reading course at the college or a home reading course?
Those things cost a lot of money, Mom, don't they?
You're worried about the money? Don't worry. We will come up with the money. We will handle it. You could pay us back with your summer earnings.
But I'm not going to be able to get it done by the end of semester, Mom.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I've got another idea. You want to hear? How about if Dad and I tutor you?
Oh, what?
Can you imagine a teenager reacting to that?
What?
Well, things at home and at work are disaster. My assistant quit, my computer crashed, I don't know what. When are you going to find the time?
Honey, we will handle it. I would really like to try for a while. If it doesn't work, we can look at another option. How about we talk to your dad when he gets home?
Thank you. Well done, guys. Really well done. So again, if we had more time, this would be a little bit different in the sense that she would have him come up with options. And the reason, when we're short of time, we go to the efficient method, right? I'll tell you what to do, whether it's a 2-year-old or a 20-year-old. It's much easier for me to do it. I've got more experience. I know what I want. But the more effective way is actually to involve children in their own lives. When they come up with the options, obviously we're not going, we are discussing it. We are talking about it. When we have discussions like this, it is building children's problem-solving abilities for themselves. And that's what we want. We're not going to be around all the time. The ideal is that they would build the problem-solving abilities so that, even when we're not around, they can make good decisions, right? So what was the intention here and what went wrong? And again, I'm mindful of the time. I think let's keep going. But again, hopefully this was a valuable thing for us to see how easy it is, right? How easy it is and the ways we shut down conversation are, you don't really mean that, you shouldn't feel that way, that's a silly way to think, I told you so, you should have done, right? Very, very thing. However, if we wanted to extend the conversations, if we wanted to them to talk more, if we wanted to connect with them, we could simply try things like, oh wow, tell me more, that sounds interesting. And what else? My favorite is help me understand. You know, when we are really at a loss and when we don't know where our children are getting those ideas, a really good way to say it is help me understand. You know, how are you thinking? What's going on? Like, I don't get it. And what do you think? And this sounds important. So again, the keys to remember is that we need to listen before guiding. We need to listen to understand, you know, understand where the other person is coming from, reflect back content, reflect back feeling, and be present. When we notice that we've gone into our own heads, we need to remind ourselves to come back and, you know, so very often parents get anxious about using these phrases because we think, you know, if I give them the opportunity to, if I listen, it's actually encouraging them. Like if I tell them, oh, you want to drop out of school? They'll say, yes, you know, I've got permission. Really, honestly, it's not like that. It is not like that. When we at least, because this guy, obviously he didn't want to quit school. He was concerned because he was failing a grade or a course and he did not know how to cope with it. Had we gone our normal stuff and we said, you know what, you know, oh my God, I can't listen to this and you just have to persevere through, we would have never understood, right? We would think, oh, here's this guy who's not interested in school and he doesn't want to continue. It's all his friends' fault. They're all potheads. I knew we shouldn't have. I told his father not to send him to that school, right? None of that is helpful. So key takeaways that we need to use encouraging languages and open the door. We need to keep asking open-ended questions to extend conversations. Okay. Just very quickly, so here's the thing, fight less and better. Simply means that when we are disagreeing, we do it in a way that is not going to damage our relationships. And again, we will go through this quite quickly, but know that what we've talked about till now, talking more, creating the environment, creating opportunities, building connection, when we do all of that, automatically the conflict will be put in its place. Automatically the conflict will decrease. Automatically we will be fighting better. So now we're just going to go through it quickly. We need to remember about conflict that it's normal and healthy. If we avoid conflict, we avoid any real connection. And the idea is to keep conflict in its place. In other words, you know, if we have a few areas of conflict, we can't let it take over our whole relationship. So if we imagine our relationship to be a big ball, the conflict should be a small part of that and not expand it to the whole relationship. But when we don't focus on building the connection, when we're not putting in the good stuff in our emotional bank accounts, then the conflict keeps seeming to increase and takes over, right? So for example, if parents are disagreeing on which school to send the child to, big area of disagreement, it will need a lot of back and forth, right? If all I can think about is that my husband is not on board with the school I want to send my child to, that conflict will grow and I cannot be happy until that conflict is resolved. If I was a master of relationship, if I knew how to keep things in their place, I would say, yes, we disagree on that. And there are many other things positive in our relationships. The more I focus on the positive things, I am better able to discuss and manage that, okay? So again, it's not conflict that destroys relationships. What destroys relationships is lack of emotional connection. What destroys relationship is lack of emotional connection. So if I have a family in my office who is fighting a lot, I am not, it doesn't bother me at all. I know that we can work at it. We need to work on the positive stuff. We need to, give them some skills. However, if a family comes and they're just not engaged with each other, they're living their own lives, they're hardly talking to each other, they're only talking about, okay, what's for dinner, and that's it. And that's harder to revive. Okay, so if you guys are still fighting, well done. Right? I'm not saying fight more, but I'm saying that that's not such a bad place to be in, right? So we hope, we need to give each other some hope. So when and how we fight is important. Obviously, the time you fight. So the worst time to fight is when you're triggered. We know that when we are triggered, when it's the check has just bounced and the bank account, the statement has just come. That's the worst time to discuss finances. Worst time. And many of us will only talk about finances when that happens, right? So when these are ongoing issues, we need to remember that we need to not talk about it when we're upset. We need to be in a calm place and we need to discuss it then. Family meetings, again, and so sorry, just to give some context, a lot of these things I'm just talking about quickly, but there are many, many resources. So on the Facebook page, on my public Facebook page, full-length videos on family meetings, on family discussions, on problem solving, and there are podcast episodes, there are blog posts, there's like, you don't need to stop here. If there was something like, if you wanted to know about the family meeting, there's many places that you can go on the website, on the, on the Facebook page and learn more about it, right? The thing with family meetings is that it's a place, it's a safe space to discuss issues. And hopefully when, say, every Saturday morning, 10 to 11, we'll meet as a family, we'll talk about what is going well, what we could improve on, what are some of the issues, what are the gripes that people have against each other. It really improves the emotional climate. It's really a wonderful, wonderful way to manage conflict and to improve connection within the family. So what are the steps to fighting better? First of all, soften your startup. In other words, how you bring up the conflict is extremely important. And research shows that women are not great at this. We tend to go in heavy-handed, and how a conflict starts is how it usually ends. So if you start off with respect and being on the same team, it's likely to go well. Stay away from toxins. So what we talked about, as much as you can. And when you notice the toxin, so you notice, oh, you're criticizing, immediately stop, rewind, make repairs, apologize, and also accept repairs. So if the other person, makes a joke or, does whatever to lighten the mood, to indicate, to offer an olive branch, accept it and soothe yourself and each other and take breaks. So notice, I'm getting upset. This is not a good time. I need to take a break, right? Taking a break doesn't mean you're stonewalling. Taking a break means that you are taking a break to calm yourself down. If you're taking a break, not a good idea to sit and think about how your spouse is completely wrong, right? The purpose of the break of timeout is to actually calm yourself down so that you can have a productive conversation. Many women say, you know what? No, I need to discuss issues as they come up. So if I am upset, my husband leaves the room, I will follow him. And my thing to them usually is, great, keep going ahead. Your relationship is not going to be happy with this, but if that's what you choose, keep going, right? If somebody leaves the room, it is because they are triggered, they're flooded, they're not able to have a productive discussion. For people who are leaving the conversation, it is their responsibility to come back to it. Don't use it as an excuse to never talk about these issues. Use it as an opportunity to improve your relationship by having conversations when you are calm. And lastly, obviously, keep conflict in its place. When the discussion is over, really, try your best to work on the positive things in your marriage, build your friendship, build your appreciation, all of that. So one of the main things to take away from conflict is to discuss relationship issues when you are not triggered or not flooded, but you are in a good space. Okay. Phew. That was a very quick look. But it's always my intention to finish at least my bit on time. And of course, we are open to questions, takeaways. Before we do that, I would just like to tell you about resources that are available. So there are 3 websites. There is Facebook, Instagram, and also YouTube. Like, there are resources many places, so please use them. The slides are already up. It's on Marzia Hassan, that's MARZIAHASSAN.org/handouts. So there's the slides, and there's, I believe, 4 or 5 different handouts. We haven't really talked about the handouts, but they're just useful things, dealing with this topic. And so, now is the time for questions. And also, if you didn't have a question, but if you had something that you wanted to share that made a difference, that really helps. It really helps for other people as well. When we, by the way, and it's learning theory, right? That when we recall what we have just learned, it actually solidifies the learning. So it's a really good way to end a conversation. And yeah, so over to you.
Sorry, Marcia, I think our time is up. We have only 4 minutes.
Okay.
And we have lots and lots of questions. So maybe what we can do is, like we talked about, maybe I can send you the questions.
Okay.
And you're going to put them up on Facebook?
Yes, so I will do my best. I mean, I'm really in Muharram mode right now, so I'm preparing for that. But at some point, I am gathering all the questions from the various workshops, and inshallah, the idea is to put them either on Facebook or on the podcast Family Connections Radio. So you will have the answer, but just please be a little bit patient. If you're emailing me or messaging me on social media, not the greatest way. If you go on my website, there's a contact form, so you can email me, but please, right now, it's a lot, like I'm too many projects in the air right now. So just be a little bit patient. Thank you.
So I'm very sorry for apologies to everybody because now I think we are namaz, azan is coming, namaz time. So we have to close this session. Like we discussed just now, your questions will be sent to Marziaba, inshallah. And we'll let you know when to have access to them. We will send you on your email the feedback form for us to know how useful was the session for you and what could we do better. So thank you so much once again for being here with us for the last 2 hours. Thank you to my colleagues for being supporting this session. And Marziaba, I know I don't have any words to say. Thank you to you. May God bless you, accept all your du'as. Wish you all the success, more strength, more courage to help everybody around us, around you, around us. And inshallah, looking forward to have another session with you again, inshallah. And once again, thank you so much for honoring us with your presence this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.